Back. Well, plenty of things to chew over after the State of the Nation address last night. Still waiting for the first doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. They're due in the country next week. But in the middle of this is this question. Will life ever get easier for business? To put it another way, the 12 million South Africans we believe are unemployed now, will they get themselves into jobs? Will there be jobs available for them? And will they be able to get income into their households? Alan McCorkey is the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Alan, good afternoon to you. You heard the State of the Nation address last night. You would have watched it. Do you believe any of what was said last night is going to make life easier for business?
Well, I think that there are two parts to the question. The first part is whether there's a plan. And I think that it's good that the president has gone out there, put his neck on the block and communicated something useful, something I would think was chewable in terms of its bits and bytes. However, the main question will always remain, which is what we normally do. This president has probably done 3 of these now, SONA since 2018 or some of thereabouts. And I think that what is always missing in a lot of these plans is where is the execution plan, the outcome part of it, right? So the planning part, the vision, the objectives, all these things, if in fact they were going to happen, they would really be very good. But do we have the capability, do we have the capacity in the state machinery to be able to deliver on that? I think the jury is still very much out on that particular piece.
I'm no communication specialist, but if I wanted to, what's the phrase, control the narrative, right? The morning after the speech the night before, I'd have had the finance minister, the DTI minister knocking on every single studio in the country to demand airtime to explain what was going to happen to business. There were a couple of interviews this morning, but I haven't really seen details coming from any of the ministries yet. I realize it takes time, but they would have known what was going to be in the speech.
Yes, I think that's a very good point, because what you are trying to always avoid is to have cognitive fog when you've communicated a plan, that you need to get very early, nice and early, into a phase where you can say, I have this particular project on the table, these are the people who are running it, this is the amount of money that's been allocated, this is the type of system that we're going to run, here is the plan, here's the timeline in terms of how long it's actually going to take to deliver. And I think that we've struggled in terms of that particular aspect of it, and we do need to resource. And that's why we've called very clearly as the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry for a meritorious public service. In other words, that one of the structural reforms that is urgent and required today is to reconfigure the state machinery, and in particular, the personnel, the skills, the competencies in the public sector, so that you can move very fast into a merit-based type system. Because if you don't do that, we will continue to have plans and we don't actually have people who can actually deliver on those particular plans, like running a team. And then you say, I want to win the PSL, I want to win the Nedbank Cup or any of the other cups, but you don't actually have the players to be able to do that. No matter how many coaches you fire and hire, you will not deliver until you buy the right strikers, the right midfield players, the right defenders, and create the right culture in that particular team for it to win.
Yeah, but I mean, Pitso Mosimane might be the best football coach our continent has ever produced. You can't go to Al Ahly and change all the players immediately. There'll be huge resistance. Doesn't the same hold true in our situation here? The president, I mean, I think you must be correct when it comes to meritorious public service, although I realize what I say is likely to make my Twitter stream explode. The point I'm making is that you can't do that quickly. There will be huge resistance.
Well, here's the thing, Stephen. Do we have a short-term problem in South Africa? No, we don't. We don't have a short-term problem. All the problems that we have, hunger, poverty, unemployment, inequality, joblessness, these are all long-term issues. At a certain point in time, you do need to take the first step. The first step is, where are you actually going to start? You can't run a business or any other organization effectively if you don't fix the area of people. It's always going to be about right people, right skills, right culture, right values. And in the final analysis, we've been talking about fixing the state for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and we haven't actually done that. So we do need to start somewhere. And unfortunately, for those people who believe that there is a slow process and there are things that ought not to change, they are mistaken. You do need to have very aggressive, almost revolutionary change for South Africa to move from where South Africa is to where South Africa ought to be. And what are we always articulating is the issue. The objective has got to be, We know people who've actually made significant progress in the area of fixing the issue of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We are not the first people to face this particular problem. There are only 8 countries or so in the world, non-Western countries, that have managed to move their economies from developing to developed economies in the last 100 years. And amongst those, you count Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Old Hong Kong, Australia, Israel, and Russia. And if you look at all those countries, the majority of them are not as endowed with the type of mineral resources that we have in South Africa or the rest of Africa. And what do? They focused on building a very strong human development index, and what sometimes people call the human capital index. So they made sure that meritocracy is going to be the core, because you've got to be able to build skills and competencies before you talk about, I want to attract foreign direct investment, because no one with cash, every money that you find follows people. I can only invest in your business because I believe and I trust the people that you have in your organization will run things correctly, and they will actually also achieve the objectives that they have set for themselves. Now, if you don't have people and you are viewed as a place that does not have those levels of competencies and skills that are required to drive a modern economy, an industrializing economy, then you are not hiding next to nothing, because you are not actually going to be able to attract that investment. And you can't wait for 10 years for the skills to be there, because you've got to be able to create them, right? And in psychology, they say people who are successful have a very strong internal locus of control. And people who are unsuccessful, they tend to have a very strong external locus of control, because they're always blaming someone else for the problem. And in South Africa, I think we've got too much of that lethargy, too much of the critic type mindset, where we are waiting for someone to do something. It's not going to happen. We need to fix the education. In particular, we need to fix the education of the Black child, so that the majority people in this country have got access to high quality education, because these are the 10 millions and the 20 millions of customers that we need in business, right? Maybe in the past, as business, we may have looked at this thing of transformation in a way that's different, as though it was not a business imperative. We tended to see it as a compliance issue. Government wants us to do it. But what you ought to be able to appreciate is that any one of the major banks can gain 10 million new customers, credit cards, car finance, home loans, new houses being built, new cars being sold, on just driving the issue of making sure that you give people the skills and you allow them the opportunities to go fend for themselves, so that we can drive this industrializing environment that we so seek in the rest of South Africa as well as the rest of Africa as well.
It's a very strong case you make, Alan Makoki. I can't see how people would disagree with you. I mean, particularly on education. I think everyone would have to agree. I do need to ask you, and I want to ask you a philosophical question, and depending on how you answer it, it might get you into a little bit of trouble with some people. So I'll give you a little bit of a health warning, okay? Do you believe this president, when he says he wants to help business, do you believe he's speaking for his party when he says that?
Well, I think that there are two parts. The first part is that, yes, I believe him as a person, that he means what he is trying to articulate and what he's trying to say. He does mean that he does mean what he says when he says, I want to help business, okay? The second part of the question deals with the contradictions that you'd find in a ruling party system such as you have in South Africa today. So you look at the ruling party, it's a very confusing place at this point in time, very internally focused on internal conflict. And somehow you'd get a sense that they've forgotten about the fact that there's a country to run. That is a very difficult situation, because we have created a problem in the Constitution of the Republic where we use a political party system. Of course, yeah, people now say you can get independent candidates to come up. The Constitutional Court has ruled in the next 2 years, you ought to be able to do that. But at this point in time, if you're the president, you're not actually the executive president. Even if you investigate the ruling party's own constitution, the president of the ruling party, the ANC, does not have any executive powers, contrary to what most people would like you to believe. Why is the president not acting against the rogue elements in his own political party? Well, he doesn't have the power to do so. All the power vests in the NEC. And who elects the NEC is the 5,000 plus delegates who arrive at conference. And who are those people? Are the people who come from all the branches that are strewn all over the place. So that's where the power actually lies. But at the same time, you've got to appreciate and understand from a political point of view that the lethargy and the apathy of the general population in taking action in respect of their own political future is also responsible for this problem. Because you look at the same ruling party, Maybe in the last elections, they got something like 10.5 million votes plus. But you look at the level of membership that they have, probably less than 1 million. Now you have 9 million people basically who are frozen in the headlights and not taking decisive action around the things that they would like to see happen. So the president is always going to be constrained for as long as he has to constantly look behind his shoulders, constantly need to consult the tripartite alliance. And these are not necessarily people who are voted directly by the majority of the people in the country. So therein lies an opportunity for political reform, reform the political system, reform the constitution, make sure that when you do elect a president, that particular president is going to have executive authority to take decisions, to appoint his own cabinet that he will craft in his own image in line with his own vision.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the previous president seemed to have plenty of executive authority to do what he wanted.
Well, he did. The question whether did he have the same vision in respect of what needed to be done for South Africa. Therein lies the problem.
Okay.
So now you have the right person, maybe with the right vision, but does he have the right structure around him to actually ensure that he can deliver?
Sure. Alan, I can give you 30 seconds. Just Eskom, I mean, do you believe Eskom's going to get better? Because I presume without it, your members are not going to be able to manage their businesses properly.
Eskom is going to remain a very meager challenge, and I think that some of the solutions that lie within Eskom, they are working very hard at them under the Director and his team to fix the short-term problem. But we do need to have a long-term solution to a mix of the energy mix and also make sure that we can take care of the rest of the region. Because if we don't take care of the region and we're not developing, industrializing the region, we will not be able to create markets for our own products and services. And therefore, it would be a story that only ends up in South Africa. We will not be able to drive 5, 6, 8% economic growth that we so require if we leave Africa outside. And Eskom is going to be a key driver of what needs to happen in those particular environments. So one of the early ideas that were proposed that Eskom needs to build a consulting group that goes into Africa without necessarily deploying capital, take advantage of the mineral resources in those particular environments and build power stations so that you can light up this entire Africa and open up this opportunity for us in a way that's big. And that will solve or contribute very significantly to the resolution of the Eskom problem in itself.
Alan Mokhoke, CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for wearing a tie for us this Friday afternoon.